So, respected
Yes.
Professor Keith Sheringham, esteemed faculty members, and dear students, a very good morning to everyone and a warm welcome to this international guest lecture organized by Department of International Collaboration for Engineering and Technology under Amity School of Engineering and Technology, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, Noida. Today, we are honored to host an insightful session as part of our international lecture series on the topic of emerging business with data and artificial intelligence environment. It's my privilege to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Professor Keith Sheringham, an independent business consultant and executive advisor in business and technology from Sydney, Australia. Professor Sheringham is a highly accomplished professional. We welcome you, sir, and our students are keen to listen from you that how we can emerge business with AI. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Can you both hear me, see me, and can you see the slides on the desktop?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Beautiful. We'll share the slides at the end. So in the slide deck, there's a quick profile of who I am, and thanks to Prof for covering that. What I'm going to do is I want to talk for about 2 minutes about AI investments and then set the context to the presentation and that sort of thing. Now, this is not financial investment advice. This is the Instagram, Meta, Facebook section where it's sliced up into 30-second chunks, and it's to grab the attention and start the day. So, based upon what we're seeing with things like DeepSeek, what CEOs of tech companies are saying, what Indian CEOs are talking about, what we're seeing is AI, whether it's facial recognition, robotics, IVR, all of those is giving business returns and is investments. Generative AI is an area of bubble, let's say, at the moment. There's investments in data centers, in data sets, and control of algorithms and the fragmentation of algorithms and LLMs, which we'll talk about as we go forward. Generative AI has a lot of hype. The returns are still to be realized. Even Copilot, ChatGPT are saying they need pricing changes and higher prices to realize the returns on investments that they've made, yet alone going forward. There's questions about efficiency, which we'll get into. Now, at the end of the day, the market is going to drive how AI shapes out. Yes, government policy is going to be a factor, but markets will drive it, whether it's the American model, whether it's the Chinese model, whether it's somewhere in between. The market is going to drive protections and safeguards that we needed around AI. It's going to drive control over data. It's going to drive the vendor risk. It's going to drive energy efficiency, and it's going to drive the specialist demand. And at the end of the day, governments have sovereignty issues, regulatory and compliance, national security, and they will impact policy and investments. Okay, that stops the 30-second sound bites. Let's get into the more formal session. This session is about you. It's a perspective on business aspects around data and AI. Okay, we'll go for about 50 minutes, plenty of time for questions and time for questions at the end. I can't see you, but please smile, enjoy, have some fun, and do some good. Okay, phone's on silent. If you need to take a call, that's fine. We're not in the room. If there's any terms you don't know, you're unfamiliar with, I expect you to get out your laptop on your phone and search for it. So if you're unfamiliar with something like sovereign risk, by all means, get out and search for it. Again, you're all on mute, which is great. Camera's off. If you need to make a comment, you want to raise a question, just type a comment in the chat and raise your hand. Okay, we'll do a quick introduction for 5 minutes. We'll do 5 minutes on what we're experiencing. We'll talk for 5 minutes about what is impacting the integration of AI into business. We'll do the bulk of the session around aspects of data and AI in business. We'll look at some business opportunities and time for more questions at the end. One last slide, and then I want to pause and seek comments and feedback. There are a whole series of AI types: generative AI, facial recognition, chatbots, robotics, IVR. For the bulk of this presentation, we throw all of these terms into a big bucket called AI, unless we call it out otherwise. Okay, let me pause there and just ask if there's any questions, any comments so far. Okay, please don't be shy. If you want to put something in the chat, please go ahead. Prof, are we all good to press on? Okay, so what is it that is happening in society and in business? And what are we managing with all this transition around AI and everything else? Sorry about that. Now, at the end of the day, there's a set of drivers: markets, customers, costs, and that sort of thing. Whatever transition we're making, we have to run the business and sustain the business while we make the transition. As a society, we just don't stop and become something new. We keep going with what we have and we manage the transition. One of the challenges in the take up of AI is balancing that transition. We sell insurances. We have to keep selling insurances to make money. The processing of insurances doesn't stop. We have to juggle that with the integration of AI and change the business. So this slows everything down. Now, at the moment, we worry about the provision, management, and assurance of technology because that is how we get access to information. As we automate more processes and operations, it is the provision and assurance and management of information that is key. And we know this because we used to put messages on the ankles of carrier pigeons and fly them around. We used to send messages across the countryside as we raced across the countryside on horses. Now, we worry about the supply of Office 365 and Word because that is how we get information. As AI becomes more prevalent, it is the focus is going to be on the provision and assurance of information, especially within automated operations. Now, we research, we design, we develop, we test, we operate and service, we consume, we manage and assure. And even now in your studies, you're doing different roles at different times. Now, the way AI is getting taken up, it's based on the pilot autopilot model. The pilot flies the plane, sorry, the autopilot flies the plane with the pilot creating for the first time, intervening when things go wrong, assuring outcomes, managing stakeholders, and things like that. AI is getting implemented along the pilot autopilot model. AI is bringing a change in skill sets. There's a need for greater problem solving. There's a need for more stakeholder management. There's a need to manage exceptions. There's a stronger advisory piece and there's a stronger assurance piece. So, those that have entry level coding positions, code is going to be written more and more by AI. But the debugging of code and the testing of code is still going to be done by people for a long period of time because AI is not good at it. And so this is an example of how a role is going to change, how the different aspects of the role change, and the changes in skill sets that we're going to need going forward. And it is this change in skill set that is slowing the take up and adoption of AI into business operations. Now, we know jobs are going to change. We know there's going to be government policy impacts. We know there's educational changes and there's going to be business changes. We'll share the slides and you can go through this in more detail further. Now, let me just pause again and let's see if there's any questions.
Professor Keith, no question yet, but one question from my side. As you have said that jobs are going to change with AI. So what kind of things students have to do so that they can be adapted to AI jobs?
Right. So the big trend, as we've talked about, is that roles are getting automated. It's starting with the routine and it'll get more sophisticated. And we talked about the pilot autopilot model, whereby you create for the first time, you intervene when things go wrong, you assure that operations are happening, and those sorts of things. Now, what is going to differ, it's going to differ with each role. And we've talked about the code cutter example. One of the ones we talked about at Confluence is the demand for project management is increasing. Why? Because it is project management that brings change the business. With this, there's a change in skill sets for business analysts. There's a change in skill sets for enterprise architecture. It's moving up the skill set as more of the routine is done by AI. I'll take some questions at the end around specific roles, but increasing your skill set in problem solving, increasing your skill set in Business 101 management, increasing your skill set around data management, data handling, those sort of things. Being able to advise people, being able to assure operations. Not only are there more roles developing in these areas, but the skill set is changing with those in operations to enable these. And we'll talk a little bit more about them towards the end in the questions. Prof, does that answer your question?
Yes, Professor. Thank you so much.
Good. Are there any other questions at this stage before we move on?
Students, you can put your question in your chat box. Professor
Please,
will be happy to
yeah,
answer your queries.
please don't be shy. There are no silly questions. There's only questions that no one else is clever enough to ask. Ah, was that a question in the chat or a beep of
Professor,
some
did
other
no question
description?
yet.
Sorry?
And no question yet from the students.
Ah, how can AI help us in upcoming educational opportunities? SS, thank you for the question. AI is going to help you in educational opportunities in several ways. It makes doing the routine of a degree easier. Now, I know there's privacy issues, piracy issues, and those sorts of things still to manage. Right. It creates new educational opportunities, which we will talk about if we get time when we talk about some of the business ones. It creates opportunities in assurance. It creates opportunities in regulatory and compliance. And there's a growing market for the teaching and the education related to regulatory and compliance. Big ones like data governance and AI governance are there. It's changing the course content and it's changing how you should be being taught the content. Giving out lecture notes that you can just read is a bit waste of time. Why? Because you're just going to put the lecture notes into AI and have it play back to you as a conversation piece around what you're learning about project risk. So SS, sorry, I don't know your name. Sorry, Subrana Sahar. Has that answered your question?
Yes, Professor, you have answered it very well. Uh,
Beautiful.
He has
That's
also
good.
answered you that thank you so much for your help.
Yep. Let's move on and then we'll come back to some more questions in a minute. Okay. AI is inducing various things within business. It is creating new demand. There's an expectation that things will happen quicker and it is intensifying existing gaps. So if there's a problem now in the way that insurance gets processed, AI is making that gap look bigger. And again, this is impacting how business integrates AI and it provides us with opportunities. There's a need for management of expectation. Those in AI have sold a lot of hype, especially generative AI. The business has brought into it, and the expectations are not being met. Let me give you a quick example. The CEO of Salesforce has come out and said buying a generative AI license for 40 bucks a head has made his salespeople write emails about 4%, 5% quicker. But 80% of emails still get ignored. So the returns for the sales team from generative AI are not there. If they make better use of prospect management, pipeline management, they will get better outcomes than writing emails with generative AI. And you can look up the quote from the CEO of Salesforce. It is putting trust at a premium as well as any remediation that is needed. We've all heard the horror stories around generative AI and the problems. Now, if your manager does not trust AI, then you are under pressure not to use it. If you think you're going to look bad with your boss, you then become under pressure not to use it. Yep. Shilpi Sharma. How is the integration of AI technologies in various sectors reshaping the required skill sets of employees? Also, in terms of privacy, Shilpa, can I do a few more slides and come back to that one? It's a great question, and I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time on it. So there's a trust issue around AI, around data, and those sort of aspects, which is impacting the take up of AI. And of course, we've talked about the demand for project management and the example around that. Now, within operations, AI is increasing expectations. It is augmenting the process floors. It is driving operational alignment, and it's changing what people do. I'll let you go through this slide at your leisure. If a process is broken, putting in AI is not going to fix it. It's going to make it worse. And we'll talk about that as we move through. Now, what is impacting the take up of AI? First of all, there's the issue of digital access. Whether it's within different areas of a business, whether it's within different industry sectors, this is a huge issue. If you do not have regular digital access in your business, like, for example, you're smelting bricks in furnaces, it's impacting how you take up AI. There is access to data, the regulatory of data, the quality of issue, the supply of data, the sovereignty of data, all of those things are impacting it. We're hearing now from the generative AI crowd that there's not enough data for them to fix their algorithms and LLMs. And if you're in a specific specialist business, the access to data is impacting the take up of AI. And Prof, you do research under contract with commercial privacy restrictions and things like that. You just can't shovel that into AI, and that is impacting the take up of AI. Regulatory and compliance, control of algorithms, skills and expertise, which is why I want to come back to Sayuri and your question. We've talked about confidence and trust, and we've talked about peer opinion. All of these are impacting the take up of AI by business. At the moment, less than 5% of the workforce uses AI. That's going to change, but it's worth considering. Okay. We're seeing AI become embedded in applications. So AI is already in your iPhone. It's seamless. Your transport and logistics software will just have AI embedded within it. There's going to be some standalone off the side bits, but it's just going to be embedded within the routine, and it's going to be seamless to who you are and what you do. We've talked about robotics, facial recognition, and those ones having greater use. And I'm going to give you a quick example. To get into an Indian airport, you've got that terminal, you've got that facial scanning, and that sort of thing. To get into the country, you've got facial recognition, passports that are scanned, and all that stuff combined. So the returns from AI are there. We've talked about returns from generative AI, and Prabjeet, yes, I've got your question as well, and I'll come to it in a minute. It isn't just one AI, it's the integration of different AI types and the complexity of the systems integration that is needed. The facial recognition to get you into a country, there's about three different AI types that are integrated together to get you into the country. So a lot of this hype that generative AI is just going to be there on the side, fixing the world. Let's just um, put a pin in that. We need to take people through the transition, and we need to get control over vendors, data, and algorithms. And we'll talk about that in a minute as we go forward. Okay, two questions I want to come back to. Considering sorry, three questions. How is the integration of technology in various, no, we, yeah, no. How is the integration of AI technologies in various sectors reshaping the skill sets of employees? Is anybody familiar with agriculture on this call, on this session? Great. Ayush, so we already see combine harvesters that are automated, driven by AI, under satellite control. If you look at Holland, who is the leading exporter of food, they have these massive factory warehouses for growing lettuces and everything else. The Dutch universities have published all of this, and it's free to use. So what happens is a little robot goes along and plants fruit and veg. The little robot goes along the next day and says, "Hey, carrot, you look a little anemic. Let me spritz you with phosphorus." And then it keeps going and going until it says you're ready to harvest. The robot goes along, harvests the fruit and veg, packs it into crates, goes down the automated logistics chain, and gets shipped off. So, agriculture is one of the leaders in the adoption of AI. It is one of the leaders in the adoption of the different types of AI. It is one of the leaders in changing the processes and operations. Now, they have massive data warehouses storing all of their data with all the governance, safeguards, privacies, and that sort of thing. Now, it's brought a major change in skill set. There are less agricultural specialists, but they're still needed. There's more programmers. There's more robotic engineers. There's more logistics change managers. There's more people in customer stakeholder management because people are ringing up and saying, "Why haven't my tulips arrived?" So, without taking too much time and without getting too industry specific, Shilpi, if I've pronounced your name right, does that answer your question? And our expert who put his hand up on agriculture, do you want to add anything to that? Okay, I'll take the silence as no, and we'll move on to the next one. Um, is it Sayuri? Considering the recent job market of layoffs happening in large numbers in various companies and doing most of the work, what tech stack can we go about to ensure a job security in this field? Okay, without more details, I can't provide a specific tech stack. But what we know is this. For those in technology, there's going to be less routine jobs. There's less routine systems administration. That's going to be done by AI with impacts to business models like Tata, HCL, and all of the others. We've talked about coding changes. AI is going to be used in data validation and that sort of thing. So those that are involved in data quality and data assurance, again, they're going to have to move up the skill set. When you move up in the skill set and the business need is addressed, the actual technology solution becomes transparent. So I understand the question, but let's not worry about the technology. Let's get you the professional skills. Let's get you the roles, and then you will pull together the technology that is needed. Does that one make sense as well? Now there's two new messages. Yeah, Sayuri, thank you for that. Right. So now, Prabjeet, Prof, have I pronounced um, Prabjeet's name right? And Prabjeet, do you want to confirm the pronunciation of your name? What role will AI play in shaping the future of our entrepreneurships and startups? It's going to transform them. It's going to create a whole set of new business opportunities, a whole set of new markets, a whole set of markets for reorganization. If I could actually answer it in any more detail, I would be the richest person in the world and we would be having a different conversation. So, Prabjeet, sorry I can't get into any more detail, but we can take that one offline towards the end. Okay, are there any more questions before we move on? And Prof, can you keep us to schedule? Yep. So this is the longer part of the talk. One of the big issues is data centers, the sovereignty of data centers and the demand for data centers. Since we talked about this at Confluence, Apple and everybody else has got together with Donald Trump in the US to build a whole bunch of data centers. The Indian government has announced that they're getting more into data centers. The Indian government has announced the need to have sovereignty and control over data centers. So there's the issue of ownership. Are the data centers commercial? The energy utilization, the utilization of the data centers, and assurance of operations. Data centers is a area where significant investments are needed in nearly every country and at nearly every level of operation. So you're the Bank of India. You want your data centers onshore with your sovereignty under your control. Where are those data centers coming from? If anybody has an answer, please put it into the chat and we'll move on. Data for business and AI operations. Now, no data, no AI. Bad data, bad AI. The Singaporean government has gone through its businesses and its economy and called out the gap in the sovereignty, supply, access, quality, and management of the big ticket items in data that it's going to need going forward. Other countries are doing bits of it. Prof, we talked about this at Confluence and how this is an area that the Indian government needs to work its way through, like many other governments. What ownership of data is there, and what is the sovereignty? And this applies at a business, a government agency, a local council, a state government or provincial government, a federal government, or a global corporation. If you do not have ownership of your data and you do not control sovereignty, there is a big risk. Now, Prof, when we talked about this in January, little did I know what was going to happen in the last 30 days. Little did I know that data sovereignty was going to be an issue between the Four Eyes countries and the US. For those who are unfamiliar, US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand, sorry, the Five Eyes, they share defense and military intelligence data. With changes in US policy, and I make no judgment call on the policy, the Five Eyes data and the sovereignty of Five Eyes data is now an issue. So if you run the Bank of India, sovereignty of your data is a big issue. Access and permissions, supply and continuity of data, quality of data, safety and security, and you need to have the agreements and the usage. If there is no data sharing agreement between Australia and India on criminal activities, that data does not get shared. And the criminal activities exploit that gap. So as you can see, data is a big opportunity, a big investment area, lots of new business opportunities, lots of roles. And Prof, we talked about exploring data in a couple of other sessions. So if you're happy, let's leave that bit there, yeah? Prof, you all good? Okay, Prof, I'll assume that and move on. AI is a user of data with accountabilities, liabilities, responsibilities, and everything that goes with it. It impacts your P&L. It impacts your customers. It impacts your staff, and it impacts your job. We talked about obligations, liabilities, and responsibilities. There are commitments around data before it gets into AI, when it's within AI, and when it's after AI and it's used again. If when you're putting your data in AI, your AI is processing it and you are violating copyrights, your data is no longer secure, that is impacting business and is impacting the take up of AI. And of course, there's assurance of blended and derived products. Blended products are where you pull different data sources together to create new data sets. And derived products are where you've pulled data get together, you've done a whole set of calculations, you've done a whole set of analysis, and you've created a new product. The issue comes with this. I'm a health service provider. I agree to provide you with data to do certain things. It's now being stuffed in AI, and a derived product has come out, it makes me look bad. What do I do? How do we manage it? This was not in the data agreement. You've now breached my trust, etc., etc. So all of this is impacting the take up of AI within business. You need to support the different types of data: metadata, structured data, unstructured data, emails, posts, Word documents, images and videos, maps, and blended and derived data. AI uses all of these. Some of it is in legacy and needs to be managed. But again, the take up of AI in business is being constrained because of the different data types are not available to meet the needs of AI. And this is a business opportunity. And this is why the Singapore government went through its major business needs. Now, one other quick one. This session is being recorded and the AI is doing a transcript. That transcript is made available. Somebody makes copies and shares it. Further copies are made and it's ongoing. Data management is no longer a linear process. It never really was, but it was often treated as a linear process. This splintering of data and this non-linearity brings problems to the management of data and brings issues in the take up of AI, because we've now got 7 competing sources of this meeting, which is correct. And that's just one of the issues to address. We quickly covered closed loop and open loop, where we were talking about getting into the country. And what I want to talk about is we need safety and security, both physical and cyber, on the data. Data needs to be remediated and preservations made. The more critical the services that are given over to AI, the greater the controls on services and operations there needs to be. We've already seen court cases in the US stuffed into generative AI. They've gone into court and they've been dismissed by the judge. As more critical operations use AI and get fully automated, there's a whole set of issues that we need to manage there, and that's impacting the take up of AI. If you look at defense, they're slowing down in many areas their take up of AI because they're not ready to manage it. In other areas like battlefield drones, they're steaming ahead. Now, I, I'm not advocating that we all become criminals and do nefarious activities and do crime. It's going to happen. We all make mistakes, whether planned or intentional. The use of data in criminal activities and nefarious activities is ramping up, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. So there's a lot of opportunities around managing the criminal nefarious and our response to it. Of course, authentication and identification, and we've talked about sovereignty at length. Sorry, there's been a problem with the slides. Just pause one sec. Can we all see the slides okay?
Yes, Professor, slides are visible.
Yep, let me just make sure that we're on the right slide on the screen. Right. So we've talked about all of these challenges around data. How do we get this managed? And now we can't fix the world, so we've got to do it on a priority basis. We're going to work our way through specific agreements for data sharing. Prof, like I said, you do the research for a private company. You already put in place a data sharing agreement. Students, you get a credit card with the bank. You have under the terms and conditions, you have a data sharing agreement. So it's working through the data sharing agreements, provision of skilling and training, putting in all the guidelines, controls, policies, and procedures. The simpler the business, the less stakeholders involved, the less lawyers involved, the less regulatory involved, the simpler it gets. And this will then drive the technology and the technology integration, as we talked about earlier on. Now, alongside skilling and training is the provision of accreditation and certification. And if you look at what Australia has done with its government agencies, it said you cannot share data until there is an agreement in place, you're skilled and trained, and you've reached a minimum level of accreditation and certification. Why? Because this helps create trust. And trust is one of the biggest factors in why data does not get shared, and AI, as we've talked about. Now, we've all seen the DeepSeek issue. We've all seen some of the problems we're having with control of LLMs and algorithms. A business needs control of its LLMs and algorithms. Control is not necessarily the same as writing code, because we control assets every day of the week through a whole series of activities. Now, the market is going to fragment. It always does. Yep, it's inevitable. So, is this one size fits all massive generative AI model going to be appropriate? The market will fix it. But if you look at CEOs from tech companies around the world, you look at CEOs from businesses around the world, they are questioning the validity and use of the massive generative AI models in favor of smaller data sets with specialist algorithms under control. And Prof, we talked about this as an Indian priority back in January. Now, the Chinese, for over a year, have led cost efficiency and energy efficiency in algorithms. The DeepSeek saga, forget everything else around it, was just a manifestation of that. If you look at universities like University of Technology Sydney, University of New South Wales, they are doing work on the next generation of algorithms, which are smaller, cheaper, more energy efficient. Businesses, we've talked about sovereignty, regulatory compliance, and customers. If you are a bank, financial services regulators are passing regulation now that you need to have control over your algorithms. What you source them from is all part of the regulation. But you just cannot put anti-money laundering into a public cloud solution. So control of algorithms is happening now, and of course the need for assurance. Now, within control of algorithms, we need to manage the learning models. We need to manage the bias that comes along. We need to do the matching. We need to manage how we infer things, and we need to manage how interpretations are handled. These are gaps that we see today within generative AI, and different universities around the world are researching these. China is leading in many of these. Some of the Asian universities are starting to drive this as well. Let's go a little bit further and then we'll pause for questions. So we talked about getting control of algorithms, and that is not the same as coding because it's managing the performance criteria. It's management of the criteria, it's assurance of the outcomes, and it's managing the response management. If we do these things with the right regulatory regime, audit, risk management, and those sorts of things, then we are getting control of algorithms. Now, um, before we talk about the demand for AI integration, we've covered a lot of ground very quickly. We've covered a lot of topics. So there's one comment in the chat, actually, a couple of comments in the chat. Irvi, good morning, sir. Thank you very much. With business increasingly relying on AI for customer insights, data privacy, and security have become major concerns. What strategies or best practice can companies adopt to ensure they protect customer data while still leveraging AI effectively? This is a great question. One of the biggest concerns consumers have is what happens with their data, whether it's medical, credit cards, and even just what they've purchased. Now, Irving, there's a set of proven, pragmatic, practical business practices that we do already to protect customers, to control their data. Sometimes we're not effective. If you look at the data breaches, grant you all of those things. If we use these proven practices as the starting point, making it a sales feature, treating AI as a user of data, and it has to meet these obligations. So in a transitory state, if your AI is leaking customer data to the Chinese government, that's a big no-no for a lot of countries and a lot of businesses. We have rules already that say you cannot leak customer data to the Chinese government, as an example, or we could talk about the Iranian government or the North Korean government. So the first step is to apply these practices. This doesn't stop us using AI. It doesn't stop us innovating with AI. It may slow us down a little bit, but the reduction in lawsuits, the risk of insurance premiums, and the risk of customer alienation is worth it. And this is what we're starting to see within business. Irvi, does that answer your question? Irvi, can you come off mute very quickly, and are you all good?
Yeah, Professor, you have answered very well. They will not be able to unmute themselves.
Ah, okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So yeah, just type into the
yeah.
chat. Um, Runak, good morning, sir. Thank you. What are your views on the regulations proposed by different nations across the globe on AI, from Australia to the US, and could that affect the ability of AI to function in its fullest capabilities? Let's take the last pass first. The answer is no. AI can function in its fullest capabilities. It's just that it's now responsible, controlled, managed, and it's not the gung ho, uncontrolled that we have been seeing. Now, in any early technology adoption, there's this balance between letting us advance and mature and putting in place the regulatory sensible safeguards. If we have not seen the need for sensible regulatory safeguards around AI in the last year, then we must have been living on another planet. Now, the regulations can be cumbersome. They can be inappropriate. They can be driven by vested interest and politics, but this happens to all regulations and all safeguards. And the safeguards for AI are going to be no different. There's going to be good bits and there's going to be bad bits. It's how we collectively manage and respond to it that is the issue. Now, there's been various regulatory frameworks around AI ethics and that sort of thing. Can we, they do vary to the needs of the countries, and I can't comment any more at this stage. But, Prof, we've talked about AI governance and data governance as a separate session. This may feed into that one. Okay. Um, Vesh, Vaishnavi, I think, if I've got your name wrong, sorry. Good morning, sir, again. As we explore advancements in AI and its impact on various industries, I'm curious about the unexplored, underutilized areas of AI. It's a great one. Are there specific sectors or markets that remain largely untouched by AI? What is the introduction where its introduction could potentially bring transform changes, what challenges might be preventing. Okay, so the things of AI like robotics, they've got a good foothold in many industries, but there's still many to come, especially in the knowledge worker industries. And we talked about agriculture as an example, car manufacturing again is another example. So there are a lot of underutilized areas that are using the existing good AI practices like robotics, facial recognition, yet alone the potential from generative AI. So there's lots of them now. Um, Sector specifics, there's too many to list. I'm going to list one: management of financial crime for financial services. It's a massive sector, and the opportunities for AI and automation are huge. Let me give you one simple example. When a transaction is made, there's a threshold for cash in Australia and most Western countries, and there's a list of sanctioned countries. So what happens is they look in the transaction for the word Cuba, put it to one side, and then they look at it again and say, ah, yes, this is Cuba Street in New Zealand. It's fine. It's not Cuba, the country. Having AI make that sanctions checking faster, with greater integrity and more robust is just one simple example. Now, there's some regulatory issues in there, but that is just one. Uh, yes, they'll bring positive transformation changes. There may be some issues. Now, what challenges might be preventing? We've sort of covered that in various aspects of this talk, but I'm happy to take that one offline. Okay, so Vaishnavi, if you can just comment in the chat. Thanks, Yuri. Um, Aviraj, if I've got it right. The world is moving ahead with AI. What are the key issues that can be solved using AI in the automotive market? Now, I'm not an expert on the automotive market, and we can take this one offline, but the supply of parts and the manufacture of parts, faster design of vehicles so that they're using less specialist um, parts. The When a car goes down an assembly line, they might put a seat in first facing the wrong way because the robot down the track turns it around, lifts it up, and it fits in behind the steering wheel. So there's lots of AI opportunities, data analytics alongside it to optimize the assembly line. Similarly, there's opportunities to optimize the supply and distribution line. And one of the biggest uses is in the design of the next generation of vehicles and vehicle efficiency. Aviraj, we'll have to take that one offline. Conscious of time, I'm going to do a couple more slides and then we'll wrap up. So, as we talked about with getting into the country, it's the demand for integration of AI types. It's not just AI, it's the different types coming together. And that's going to be systems and interfaces, data integrity sharing, having algorithms and LLMs work with other types of AI. One of the challenges with the generative AI and some of the big American suppliers is they don't want to integrate with other AI types. But again, the market will just fix this. Having the required standards. We have standards for sharing of electricity. We have standards for road construction and those sort of things. Why? Because it's safe, secure, um, enables us to do all the things and interact. Standards are emerging for the interaction between different AI types. Standards take time to evolve. They're not always perfect. It can be a bit of bureaucratic, regulatory and compliance issues, and of course, the operations and services. Now, I'm going to skip benchmark testing because we're running out of time, but it's in the slides. What I want to talk very quickly is about quantum computing, and then let's pause and do more questions and answers. We've been going for just about an hour now, so you're probably reaching saturation point with the information. Right. Quantum computing is the multi-state computing. It's no longer yes, no, zeros and ones. India's got an investment program underway around quantum computing. China is again has a huge quantum computing program. The US does, and some of the European countries are actually leaders in quantum computing. Now, quantum computing is going to have two major business impacts. I know there's going to be more in processing speed and writing new software, but let's not worry about those. It enables us to crack the current cryptography. So everything that uses an SSL certificate at the moment, and there's thousands of things every day, they are vulnerable to quantum computing. The American government has issued a directive that by 2030, American security is safe from quantum computing. HSBC 2 years ago released the first institutional banking standard for safety of transactions in a quantum computing world. So it is coming. It doesn't have to be realized, it has to be the threat. Some group of terrorist nutters somehow get get control of quantum computing and broadcast that they have cracked an encryption for banking services. The economic impacts are huge. They don't have to actually done it, but they can just cause chaos. So quantum computing on cryptography is obviously a big issue. The second area is it totally transforms LLMs, chip design, and algorithms. We all know there's a new generation of research to make algorithms faster, quicker, that sort of thing. Quantum computing will shift that again. And if you look at UTS, University of Technology in Sydney, they've got a very small team that started looking at the next generation of algorithms and LLMs in an environment of quantum computing. So if you want a research topic that's going to keep you engaged for the next 4 years or more, have a think about these two. Now, let me just, there's a whole bunch of business opportunities in the slide deck that we've covered off. So there's a couple of question slides, but let's pause there and throw it open to questions. We've been going for an hour. We've covered a lot of ground very, very quickly. There's been a lot to take in. There's been some great questions. Let's get some more questions.
Vaishnavi has asked that what are your thoughts on AI in the law sector? Do you think it
Oh,
is possible to introduce AI-based software in law field also?
yeah. So there's a entire video in my collection just dedicated to AI and the law. There's a whole series of things that are going to happen. A lot of the routine creation and processing of documents is going to get automated. Whether it's creating a contract for the sale of your business, validating dates within a contract to make sure there's no conflict, to make sure that they haven't lapsed, through to assessing contradictions in terms and conditions. There are uh, intellectual property applications. There are massive areas of law that are getting increasingly automated, and it's just starting now. The specialist areas and the specialist knowledge, again, it's going to take a lot longer to get into. Now, one of the aspects of law is criminal prosecutions. The law and AI is being used to help in speeding up those criminal prosecutions. So if you have a family member that's been abused by adults in some horrible situation, you want that prosecution to go quickly. You don't want to have to go to court many, many times. You don't want to have to keep thinking about the horrible situation that occurred. Park, park the impact on the children. So AI is being used to help create criminal prosecutions, help speed them up, and help with the validation of facts so that it's less stressful for people in the process. And you can go through the different areas of law, like criminal investigations and that sort of thing, and the similar patterns are happening. One of the specialist areas that is getting special attention from various law schools, um, and there's one in the US that eludes me at the moment, is the law specialization. And it's interpreting the different conflicts within the different sections of the law and coming up with guidelines on how to interpret and how to apply. The law firms themselves are having to put in control measures so that people don't shovel stuff into the public cloud when they shouldn't, and they're not using the wrong cases as has been seen in the press. Now, there's an example in Australia whereby, for a whole plethora of reasons, a whole series of case law around commercial real estate has not been allowed to be put into AI. And they're working through the legislation, they're working through how they do it. Now, this is an example of where you have a specialist data set, specialist algorithms, and the benchmark is the proven law, not what Keith thinks is the law in a conversation with friends over coffee. So one of the challenges with generative AI is being that they're including everything in the model, yet the benchmark of here's the world's foremost 100 experts in this area, and starting with them and their knowledge and their baseline is one of those challenges that's shaking out. But because of a whole series of regulatory issues, it's been slowed down. Um, I'll make a note to do the law link and the ag link, which I'll share with Prof with the slides, and she can share on. Okay. Vishnavi, does that answer your question?
Yes, Professor, you have answered every question very well, and a wonderful session by you. And thank you so much for giving our students useful insights about AI and how basically business can be emerged by use of AI. It can be enhanced by use of AI. And you have very well said that jobs are going to be changed with AI. AI is not going to take your jobs, but the nature of jobs are going to be changed. So students, you have to increase your skill set, you have to increase your problem solving capabilities, you have to learn more towards LLMs, data handlings, because these are the areas where you are going to apply your concepts in different domains. So thank you, Professor, for sparing your valuable time, and it's late night in Australia. So thank you for giving your time and interacting with our students. Hope students will take benefit from this lecture, and we will be uh, going up with further such kind of lectures with you, and we will try to collaborate with you on some research problems so that students and we together can do some good research projects on that. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you for listening. I know we've covered a lot of ground very, very quickly. That's why we did the sound bites around investments for your futures at the beginning. Everybody, have a great afternoon and we'll talk shortly.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
students, for
you.
joining the session. Thank you, IT team, for your help and support. Thank you, everyone.